Today's session is resources and supports from the Alzheimer's Association and from the Association for Frontotemporal Degeneration. I am so excited to be here today with two community experts, Nicole McGurin and Matt Sharp. Nicole McGurin is the Family Services Director and New England Research Champion for the Alzheimer's Association, Massachusetts, New Hampshire chapter. Nicole has her master's in gerontology from the University of Massachusetts, Boston. She has nearly 20 years of experience in the field of long-term care and community, assisted living, and nursing home settings. She's worked as a case manager, protective service worker, and area agency on aging manager in the Massachusetts Aging Services Access Point system. Since 2001, her focus has been in dementia care, starting a 23-bed Alzheimer's care unit in a nursing home and managing a 40-person Alzheimer's care unit in an assisted living. She's worked at the Alzheimer's Association, Massachusetts, New Hampshire chapter for 13 years. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you, Katie. It's great to be here.
Yeah. And Matt Sharp joined the AFTD staff in December of 2009 and today is a program manager. Matt earned his Master's of Social Service degree from Bryn Mawr College's Graduate School of Social Work and Social Research. He made a career transition to social services from the field of natural sciences. Matt is integral to AFTD's patient and caregiver support and education efforts and is responsible for the development of AFTD's grassroots network. Welcome, Matt.
Welcome. Thank you. It's great to be here.
I think that most people know, my name is Katie Brandt. I'm the Director of Caregiver Support Services and Public Relations for the MGH FTD unit. And these Community Forum Fridays are really an opportunity during the COVID-19 pandemic for us to try to bring education, information, and support to our community of families living with progressive dementias in their lives. We record all of our Community Forum Friday sessions and then post them afterwards on our MGH FTD unit YouTube channel. And this will be a conversation where I'll chat with Matt and Nicole, but if folks who are in the audience have questions for our presenters, they can enter them into the Q&A or the chat box and I'll moderate those questions. So Matt and Nicole, thank you for being there through my long introduction. So I think that it would be great if we started out we'll start with Nicole, but really just talking about what are some of the services and supports that are still being offered to families during this pandemic time?
Thanks, Katie. Sure. So like so many others out there, the Alzheimer's Association had to very quickly move all of its operations to be remote. And I'm happy to announce that really all of the service that we previously provided are still available in a new virtual setting. I think the most important service that we have to offer families is our 24/7 helpline, which is available at 800-272-3900. And anytime, day or night, people can get individualized advice to whatever question or concern they have regarding caring for their loved one with Alzheimer's or any type of dementia. And that's also available through our website, alz.org. But we've also really pleased that we have been able to move our support groups to be telephone support groups and have a wide range of groups available right now, including groups for people with in the early stages of dementia, caregivers who are caring for someone with younger onset dementia, as well as groups for people who speak Spanish, and groups for people kind of specialized in terms of whether you take care of your loved one at home or if you're managing the challenges of their care in a residential care facility. And then all of our education programs we're also offering in an interactive online environment. And you can see all of these programs listed on our website, alz.org.
And Nicole, just so that you know, when we post this video to the YouTube channel, we'll list those resources in the description, so folks will be able to see them written out as well.
Great, thank you. I'll share with you a great link that really helps people easily see what's available virtually right now in Massachusetts and New Hampshire.
Awesome. So do you have openings? So what if you're a caregiver with a loved one at home with dementia and you've never participated in a support group before? Is now a time where you could join a support group for the first time?
Absolutely. Many of the groups that we've put together on a telephone group actually are new groups to us. People who, and there may be some people who sign up who were a part of a group that met in person and are now looking for a telephone group, or they could be people that are brand new to a support group as well.
And what do those support groups look like, Nicole? Like, how long are they, and how many people might be participating in a group?
Sure. I'm actually leading one of these groups, so I can tell you exactly how it's going right now. And I will tell you, I think we've been getting great feedback for these telephone groups. We've always had a couple of them, but not as many as we understandably have right now. And most of our groups right now are running for a period of 4 weeks each. So people are not signing up for the long term. They can sign up, they can continue the next time the group is offered. The groups are offered at a variety of different times a day, because we know that even with all of us being stuck at home, there are still times of day that are better, especially for caregivers, than others. So there are groups in the morning, afternoon, and the evening. And the groups are an hour long. And the groups really do center on whatever concerns the caregivers are experiencing currently. There's not a formal presentation. It really is about what concerns they have right now. I can tell you that, a lot of the issues that are being discussed in the groups right now, are especially around how to find some respite for yourself during the day when you can no longer send someone to a day program or have a family member take someone out for lunch. And how do you take care of yourself in those circumstances, as well as talking about the specific behavior challenges that are coming up because someone with dementia has had their routine disrupted. So those are two huge issues that have been coming up in the groups.
It sounds like that is a really important service. And Matt, would you like to speak a little bit about, we'd love to hear about what are the services that the Association for Frontotemporal Degeneration, AFTD, is offering at this time?
Well, our usual services are also still available and have also primarily become virtual. So AFTD does have a helpline. It is not a live helpline, so people have to leave a message, and we will try and get back to them as quickly as possible within 24 hours if we can. And the number is 866-507-7222, but it's also available via email as well, and that's simply info@theaftd.org. We also have connections to FTD-specific support groups around the country. These are not formally run by AFTD, and so are structured in a variety of different manners. AFTD has affiliations with the support group leaders and provides support and education to them about frontotemporal dementia. And they are also switching to virtual formats, so most of them now are meeting by phone. AFTD does run a number of phone groups directly. This includes groups for people confronting the behavioral challenges related to FTD. There's groups for people dealing with the language forms of FTD, PPA. There's one group for caregivers for people with FTD with ALS. And we have a group for parents who are co-parenting and have children at home. And then there are two groups that meet by Zoom for people with an FTD diagnosis. And so all of our groups meet monthly, and they are somewhat limited. We can't have too many people on the phone at once, so the groups try to stay to about 12 people. So there may be a waiting list for some of the groups, but there is space in others. So people can get involved with the phone group simply by contacting the helpline. Sorry.
Well, it sounds like one of the things that both of you are doing is really recognizing that even if you fall under the umbrella of living life with a frontotemporal disorder or living life with Alzheimer's disease, that there are still maybe specific issues that might be unique to you if you are young onset or if you have a unique or specific diagnosis like PPA. And it sounds like you're trying to sort people in support groups based on those issues. Matt, does AFTD get feedback that's helpful to folks when they're participating in support groups that are more geared to their specific needs?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Frontotemporal dementia is such a mix of things. So it is really kind of critical that we provide those support specifically to the needs that they're facing.
And Nicole, do you get feedback that's like that at the Alzheimer's Association? I'm particularly thinking about the differences for folks who have a young onset compared with the typical age of onset that might happen in the 70s or after.
Yeah. I mean, I think groups can be helpful in different ways. I mean, I think if ideally, it's great to be able to get a support group that is defined by some special common needs that people start with having. I think a lot of times when I've led groups like that, I think people kind of bond more quickly in those groups because they all have this connection. At the same time, sometimes, especially when we're doing groups in person, it may be in a location where there's just not the population to have a group that's specialized in that way. And I have found it, honestly, in leading those groups that, there's honestly more that ties you together as a caregiver of someone with dementia than kind of divides you in many ways. So I think they always do seem to find a way to support one another, even if they're not exactly the same. So I think it can work both ways, but when you have the opportunity to do something specialized, I think it can be really a wonderful experience for those caregivers who are a part of that.
I really love what you're saying about the idea of that folks just figure out a way to come together and support one another, because I think that that's a message that we all really want to hear right now. I had a caregiver tell me last week in support group that caregiving can be isolating. And there's something about pandemic that has started to help her feel actually more connected because we're all alone, but in this together. And I thought that was very powerful.
I heard a caregiver say something similar to that too, Katie. I also heard a caregiver say that she feels that since so many people are now isolated and stressed, that she feels that everyone is much more sympathetic to her situation. Like they understand what it's like for her, even, in the kind of her other circles than they did before. Yeah,
I think that there's some truth to that. And it's hard, right? When I think people want to empathize with the situation of caregiving, but if you don't have context for it, it can be hard to imagine what it's like.
Yeah.
Matt, what are some of the things that you're hearing from the caregivers or persons living with a diagnosis who are participating, whether it's in support groups or engaging with AFTD in any other way?
Well, I run one of the Zoom groups for people with FTD. And it's been pretty interesting to hear them talk about how the pandemic is causing a greater sense of isolation for everybody, because that is their norm. And a lot of times they've been saying, well, this is, hey, welcome to our world. This is what we have to do all the time. And it's been kind of neat to see the people in my group appreciate that recognition of what they have to do on how their day-to-day life goes. So certainly that sense of isolation, which is always prevalent with FTD because it's such a rare, compared to Alzheimer's at least, a very rare dementia that very few people have ever even heard of. There's often been that sense of isolation, but now it's combined with the physical isolation of a lot of people. And that is combined certainly with, a general sense of anxiety that kind of, makes everything feel magnified, both on the part of the caregivers as well as people with FTD. And certainly with behavioral changes in FTD, once you add that anxiety and stress, things can certainly get even more pronounced.
Absolutely. And I think that one of the things that we try to do at the MGH FTD unit, and I know that both AFTD and the Alzheimer's Association do, is to empower people with knowledge. And Matt, I just want to take a moment and recognize that today was supposed to be the annual education day for AFTD. We were all supposed to be in Baltimore, probably with hundreds of members of the greater FTD community. And so I just wanted to take a moment and kind of reflect on what are some of the ways that you have had to focus your educational efforts during this pandemic time. How are you providing information to the FTD community that's relevant to them?
Yeah, well, it's been a huge pivot for sure to go from planning this in-person conference for around 300 people to trying to provide as much as we can virtually through our website and other platforms. So while it certainly isn't going to replace the benefits and enjoyment of being in person in Baltimore, we do have a series of webinars that are taking advantage of some of the presenters that were going to be at our conference, but focusing on some of the more prevalent issues currently with the pandemic. So for instance, just recently we had Jennifer Pilcher from Boston area lead a webinar all about coordinating and managing FTD care in the current changing environment. Most recently, just yesterday, one of our volunteers did a webinar on self-care and mindfulness and remaining positive during this pandemic. And very excited that the next one in the series is going to be an Ask the Expert session with Dr. Bruce Miller from the University of California in San Francisco. So he's going to be fielding questions about FTD and COVID-19. And then we'll have two others later on in the month and beginning of May. One will be a webinar with very Reverend Tracy Lind, who's a Dean Emeritus of the Trinity Episcopal Church in Cleveland, Ohio. Tracy was diagnosed with PPA, a primary progressive aphasia, several years ago. And she's going to be sharing some of the things that she's learned about taking care of herself and living, with her partner. So that's going to be general, but also specifically about, the current situation as well and how to stay positive through this pandemic. And then in May, AFTD's CEO, Susan Dickinson, is going to be talking about how AFTD's mission is trying to adapt to all the changes.
I mean, that is a great lineup. So can you tell us again, if someone wants to participate in one of those webinars, how can they sign up?
So the registration is now open for Bruce Miller's online. So there's a direct link in our latest newsletter that just went out, but I think at the bottom of our main homepage, you'll be able to find a link as well to the registration.
At the AFTD.org. And I've put that in the chat along with the Alzheimer's Association website, ALZ.org. And then I will include the specific links when we post the video after. Nicole, you mentioned that there are educational offerings through the Alzheimer's Association that now people can access virtually. And so how can folks find out what topics are available for education and sign up for those?
So those are also on our website, alz.org. And some of the topics include, we have a three-week series that's called Living with Alzheimer's for early stage. And that's for people in the beginning stages of any kind of dementia and their care partner to attend together, which we've been offering. And actually that immediately was very popular. So you'll see that listed, but we'll continue to offer that. We have a workshop that we do about effective communication, another one about managing difficult behaviors. We have one coming up as well, looking at specifically at safety concerns, especially some safety concerns that we always do a safety concerns, but we'll also be obviously providing safety tips for this unique time that caregivers find themselves in. We've also been really happy that we've been continuing to be able to provide some of our research webinars as well during this time, and that's we've found been really popular with our constituents, including our caregivers, and some of the feedback about those research programs, which aren't really helping them dealing with their day-to-day today, was that they felt like it gave them a sense of hope right now that that research was still going forward, and noting that when this is all over, hopefully soon, that unfortunately the people we work with are still going to be dealing with whatever dementia they have, and they found it really hopeful to know that that researchers hadn't given up on them, and that we're still working so hard to be able to find treatments and a cure for these really tough diseases that our families find themselves dealing with.
Yeah, well, the director of the MGH FTD unit, Dr. Brad Dickerson, is known as globally as a researcher in the field of Alzheimer's disease, frontotemporal disorders, and related conditions. And yes, I can say that our team and the research projects that we're connected with for Alzheimer's disease and FTD, even if we have had to pause our in-person research visits, that's all it is. It's a pause button. And we're using this time to think in new ways about how to move forward. I actually think that there is a lot to learn about this pandemic experience, and there are many parallels when we think about the diseases that cause progressive dementias. For me, one of the things that I think about a lot is the idea that the disease process is the same for humans around the world, but the resources and structural supports, things like your government supports, your healthcare system, vary around the globe. And so what can we learn about this pandemic experience that can help to inform the work that we do for FTD and Alzheimer's? Yeah. So I think that one of the things that we've been hearing from caregivers is that they really appreciate the continued education and supports that you're offering. And I just want to also take the opportunity to point out that even though we're the FTD unit, that Nicole, we have you here, the Alzheimer's Association. And we always like to remind folks that the Alzheimer's Association is not just for people with a specific Alzheimer's disease diagnosis. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. So I often begin my presentations when I'm out in the community or online by letting people know that, we technically are the Alzheimer's Association and Related Disorders of America Association, but that's way too long of a name to have. So we're known as the Alzheimer's Association as our public nickname. But yes, we are there to support families and people living with all kinds of dementia, and as well as people who are in the stage of their worry that they might have dementia. And actually, that's a fair number of the people who reach out to us for assistance as well. So we have our team members that answer the helpline are trained to offer advice with all different types of dementia, and we have resources and materials that we can share for people with all different types of dementia. And I can say from the programs I offer personally and the groups that I lead personally, it's a rare group that everybody who is in that group is dealing with Alzheimer's or some other type of dementia. It always is a mix of dementias that people are dealing with.
Yeah. And Matt, do you find through AFTD that you get folks who are at different stages? Maybe they're worried about a diagnosis, they have a working diagnosis, or they have unique diagnoses. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, it's definitely people who contact the helpline are at all different stages in relationships to the disease. And like Nicole, we get a lot of people who are contacting us saying, I think my brother-in-law may have FTD, to people who have actually had a loved one pass away and want to find ways to stay connected to the organization as well. And I'll also just wanted to echo what Nicole was saying, in that one of the things that we've learned about dementia is that it's never actually one disease to begin with. And even though people may be diagnosed with FTD or Alzheimer's, chances are there's more than one pathology going on in the brain and a whole mix of different symptoms as well. And that includes, Lewy body and other types of dementia. And FTD in particular, I think has a unique position in that there is a lot of overlap, both with the rare Parkinsonian-like diseases, PSP and CBD, but also with ALS. So I think almost by definition, FTD becomes something of a catch-all. So yeah, I think the distinctions we make and the names we give the diseases are certainly helpful and help organize and think, but the experiences that people go through in life really are similar, and there's so much overlap.
Yeah. And one of the things that I've coached caregivers on, I've had caregivers say to me, I'm not a support group person, or I went to a support group, it wasn't a good experience. And I really encourage them to try again, try a different group. And Matt, can you speak to that a little bit about what if, how is it to find the right support group? Is it always a home run the first time?
No, certainly not. And it's particularly, I think, when people receive a diagnosis, in some ways, at least for some people, may not be the right time to even try. Oftentimes, at least with FTD, there's just so much upheaval and chaos that precedes a diagnosis that people often will just need some time to sort of, get their bearings back. But definitely, I've heard of people, who will try almost immediately after diagnosis, but then come back 6 months, a year later, and find that they are in a much better space to benefit from the groups, and also to help other people. And that's certainly, I think, an important aspect of the people who are participating in these groups, is that they are very much, people helping each other, as well as, having a group leader who runs the group. But that's the whole basis of peer support, is that you can reach out to each other. Yeah.
Nicole, what are some of the ways that you've helped people who are new to the community to feel like, how can they start to get support if they feel not quite ready to jump in with both feet?
Yeah, I think it is really important to take an individualized approach, because, when people reach out to the association or somewhere where we're talking about the association, some people are, maybe they've been to support groups for other issues and they're really ready to kind of jump into that. Other people that I talk to in the beginning, maybe what they're most interested right now is learning about research. They want to talk, they've gotten diagnosed, and they feel like the best way for them to take control is to be a part of a study. And that might be where I focus for right now. Other people that reach out to us want to be involved with public policy, or maybe they want to be a part of a walk team. That's maybe the way they feel most comfortable, putting their foot in the water and starting to take control over the things that they can. So I think it's a matter of, spending a little time to talk to the person and seeing what to them feels like the most important issue right now, and what are they most comfortable with, and what's most important is making some kind of connection, so that as their disease progresses, because unfortunately all these families we work with are dealing with a progressive disease, that they know what other supports are out there.
Exactly. And I think to learn what else is out there and try on a few things. And I think also can be challenging. I know that some caregivers who come for the first time, they talk about how, boy, that experience was really heavy, and sometimes can be depressing, right? Starting out when they're early in the stage and maybe thinking about what's ahead. So how do you help families who are new to support group and maybe hearing some things that can be tough to hear? Maybe it would be great, Matt, if you responded, and then Nicole, just how do you help people when they're hearing tough things?
Well, I think it is important for people to, experiencing those emotions. And, there's just no way around the fact that this is, it's a devastating news. But allowing people to go through that process, but also making sure they know that they have avenues of support, and that they're not going to be going through it alone, even if it is, one of the hardest things people may have to experience.
Yeah, I agree with that. Nicole, how do you coach folks who say just hearing other people's stories was tough?
Well, I think in some situations it might be possible to try to, if we can, direct people to a group that's tended for people in the early stages, so that those issues will be the same. I think for a lot of families, we just try to let them know that this disease for everyone progresses differently, and just because you heard one person's story does not mean that's going to be your own story. And also just to try to give them some coaching around, focusing on the strengths that their loved one has right now, and trying to make the most of the time that they have right now. And while it's important to be educated about what's ahead and to make plans so that you're ready for that, I think it's also equally important to, if you can, if you have emotionally, focus on the time that you have right now to enjoy your loved one.
How about through AFTD? Are there still opportunities? What if somebody wanted to host a fundraiser that they were planning to have at a restaurant in May?
Yeah, I know. One of the things that our development and fundraising folks are doing is just working with people to come up with creative and new ways to take advantage of all the different technologies that are available, and also just to think creatively about how to transform their plans into something that will still work, given the need for social isolation. So it's definitely a time where there are a lot of opportunities still, but it does take a little bit of creative thinking to figure out how to make it work.
Yeah. And is that something, when we talk about the helpline, I think people might naturally think, oh, the helpline is for when I'm having a behavioral challenge or I need info about diagnosis. But could someone also call the helpline if they wanted to talk about doing an online advocacy event or a fundraiser of any sort?
Oh, absolutely. We often think of our helpline as sort of one of the front door to AFTD, and encourage people to use that number for any question or interest they may have. So certainly when people contact the helpline with those questions, we will simply direct them to the appropriate staff member at AFTD and connect them with them so that they can explore the options.
And Matt, we have a request from the chat. Could you read that hotline number one more time? Because I don't have it in front of me at the moment, and I'll type it in.
It's 866-507-7222.
Wonderful. And, I know I'm a part of the Alzheimer's Impact Movement, which is advocacy for Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. And I have felt so empowered by being a part of that group because it's given me the opportunity to speak on behalf of individuals living with FTD, young onset, and related dementias. And I know that right now the Alzheimer's Impact Movement is working on policy initiatives that folks can participate in online to reach out and support our encouragement for our policymakers and legislators and elected officials to support increased funding or policies that are going to help to expand services and supports for our families living with dementia in their lives. So, just because we can't get out and storm the hill doesn't mean that we can't raise our voices.
And the AIM is certainly a huge partner for FTD as well. So we always encourage families that are facing frontotemporal dementia to not hesitate to join and participate in those efforts as well. Even though it may be run by the Alzheimer's Association, those initiatives are going to really benefit everybody, no matter what type of dementia they have.
Yeah, I was actually the very first year that I was an advocate with the Alzheimer's Association Advocacy Forum. I went out and I had an appointment with my Massachusetts elected official, and we were meeting with a staffer, and I shared my story about losing my husband to FTD, and the staffer looked at me and said, "My mom passed away from FTD."
Wow.
And I just thought, this was a way too to like educate that staffer that the policy work that we're doing for the larger Alzheimer's umbrella actually increases funding and research and services and supports for all dementias. And I really liked what you said too about that it's not just one thing, but often there's this overlap. So
Right.
we're in it together. We are.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's definitely true with the research too. I mean, even though it may nominally be for FTD patients, it doesn't mean the results aren't, and the learning isn't going to apply across diseases.
Right. Matt, is there anything that you found that has been like new or unique? Anything about the COVID-19 that you would like to say to folks today as we just think about this, our community and how we can connect and be supportive?
Just that we're still here, and even though it can feel overwhelming, that's often the best time to reach out to somebody, and it's really is important, I think, to make a connection of some sort, and certainly through our helpline. One of the things that we do a lot of is just listen and give people an outlet for what they're experiencing, and to make sure that they know that there are other people who have gone through some of the same things.
Yeah, Nicole, I was asking Matt, for your message today, for our community, for our families, really related to COVID-19. Is there something that you would like to say, or that a new feeling, or maybe it's the same that COVID-19 has brought up?
So I would just to let people know that that the Alzheimer's Association is still there for you, and that we know that that the challenges of COVID-19 are making the challenges of being a caregiver even more difficult than before, and that we want to be able to be there to support you, to point you to resources, to help you problem solve around specific concerns that you have. And we know that those concerns are so unique from caregiver to caregiver, like they always are with Alzheimer's, but I would honestly say those concerns are more unique than ever right now with this additional challenge of COVID-19. So if people have not reached out to us before at our helpline, I urge people to reach out there, whether it's to ask your specific question or if it's to see if there's a support group that's right for you, or an education program, or to take a look at our website, because I think that this disease, these diseases are isolating enough all the time, but to have this additional isolation of social distancing is just can be really unbearable, I think. And it doesn't have to be that way. There's a lot of different ways that people can get that support. Whether it's a one-to-one conversation, whether it's going to a support group. And for some people, it might be, watching a recorded version of an education program. And that might be what they need right now. We also have one thing I did not mention earlier, was we do have some online support groups as well that you can access through our website. So for some people, that might be their comfort. They might not want to talk to someone or see someone, but they want to be able to ask questions of someone in the same situation. So that's also available as well.
And is that like a chat group, or would that be, you would participate online like just by typing?
It's you can access it through our website, but it's called ALZ Connected, and I'll give you you can list that link when you post the recording for this. And there are some different ways. Some of them are kind of a chat room, others are kind of a Q&A setup where you just might have a question that you as a caregiver want to ask to other caregivers and others who are in the group will answer that. So more of a message board. They're very active. It's rare that someone posts a question that they don't get someone's ideas on that answer, you know, in an hour or maybe less. So it's a pretty active chat group as well. So there are a lot of different options with that ALZ Connected platform that we'll list in the program notes for people to figure out some ways to connect online.
That's great. And Matt, doesn't AFTD have an active Facebook group as well, or more than one, I think?
Yeah, no, there's certainly several groups on AFTD's Facebook page. And there is also a Facebook group for people who are diagnosed with FTD as well, which is a closed group where people can share those experiences with others who share their diagnosis. But definitely the social media there's a variety of options out there for people to connect online. And those are also listed on AFTD's website as well. I'll make sure you have that link, Katie.
Yeah, that's great. You know, I think that I've really appreciated everything that you guys have shared today, and you really have fulfilled the purpose of why I wanted this webinar to happen, which is to just remind folks. I know you're getting so much information these days and it can feel overwhelming, but to remind them that there are entities who are still working hard and there every day for you and your family. Their services, supports are out there. Community isn't canceled, right? You know,
Absolutely.
we can still be together even though we're apart. And I would also like to say that if you haven't participated in a support group and you're worried about the heaviness of it or the difficult things, I would say that I've been connected with FTD and Alzheimer's support groups for the past 11 years. And my experience as a participant and a facilitator, sometimes surprisingly so, is that I've had real experiences of joy and love and connectivity and warmth in those online, telephone, and in-person support groups that have really helped me to feel better. And I've heard that from other caregivers as well. Yeah. Well, Matt and Nicole, are there any closing remarks that you would like to offer to the community today as we wrap up our time together?
I'll just encourage people to reach out to AFTD and take a look at our website. We do have a variety of COVID-19 and FTD specific information that we're generating. We have created an entire web page specifically for COVID-19 and FTD. So there's a lot of great information, as well as recordings of webinars and other resources that you can find through our website. And I know, as always, don't hesitate to contact us through the helpline as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Matt.
So I would echo the same thing. I would just say, please don't hesitate to reach out to us or the AFTD Association as well. I don't think you can, and I would say you can reach out to both. There's no such thing as too much support or too much information anytime, but especially now. And I would say too, to keep checking out our website. We're adding new things all the time because resources are changing all the time, needs are changing all the time. So to keep checking it, because we're adding new things all the time, and we're educating our helpline team with new information about what resources are available right in whatever community you would happen to be all of the time as well. So even if perhaps you called once and we did not have a specific group for that need, or maybe there wasn't something you were looking for, you can certainly try again too, because things are changing all the time with what's available, and we are really committed to making sure we've got the most up-to-date information for caregivers who reach out to us.
Thank you for that. I'd like to thank you both personally for being champions in our community. The work that you're doing with individuals and families is making a difference. And I would just like to say thank you for that. So
thank you, Katie. The same to you as well. And I really appreciated the opportunity to be a part of this forum today.
Oh, you're welcome.
As well with me. Thank you very much, Katie.
Okay. Well, stay safe, everyone. Be healthy, and we'll see you all again soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.